Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. As you can tell by the thumbnail, today we are talking about vibrating jigs. And here's a quick snapshot of my vibrating jig box. This box is actually a spinnerbait buzzbait box that a dude that I met online, Will Selby with Bass Angler Bait Company, ended up transforming into a bladed jig box, and it works way better as a bladed jig box than it does as a spinnerbait buzzbait box. So we're going to take a look at some bladed jigs today and some different ways that I fish them. But for me, it's at the end of the day, it's a huge fall confidence bait. So you got your standard bladed jig, right? This is a Z-Man jackhammer. It's the only one that I own. It's the only one I've ever owned. I may own more, we'll see. But this guy is gonna create quite a bit of head knocking. You guys can see that blade, right? I didn't chip that paint off of there. The head knocking has chipped that paint off of there. And that's the primary difference that you're gonna get with your different bladed jigs that are on the market. Depends if they have a direct tie like this, it's tied directly to the head, or it depends if they have a split ring tie like this. You're gonna get a totally different action, totally different sound out of these two baits, even though they look almost identical, right? Coming through the water, this is gonna come basically straight back at you unless you give it a rod twitch or a reel twitch and cause it to act erratically. This coming through the water is gonna come back at you, but in an erratic action. It's going to hunt, it's gonna travel back and forth because that split ring gives the head much more movement. So it does this coming through the water on a straight retrieve. And then you can twitch it, reel twitch it, rod twitch it. If the bass are up and feeding, they might be looking for something like this. If the bass are not necessarily up and feeding, but still active, they may be looking for something like this. The only person that can, the only way you're gonna know is if you throw both and have the bass tell you what they want. You guys will hear me talk a little bit more about this company later on in the video. This is Nate's Custom Baits. Great little US made company. You can see that skirt is a little unique, right? So they do silicone and natural hair. And you guys will see some swimming action on this later on in the video, so you can see that hunting action I was telling you about. Here's a Strike King bladed jig that you can call it. You can see that I've taken the skirt off of it and I've got a fluke tied on there. One of the things I like to do is reuse some of my old baits. They work fantastic on the back of a bladed jig, specifically flukes. But if you've never tried this on the back of a bladed jig without a skirt, it's definitely something you're gonna wanna take a look at. Another bladed jig worth an honorable mention is the Strike King, or no, I'm sorry, the Terminator shuttering bait. Again, split ring connected, plastic blade, does not make any sound, but this bait thumps my rod harder than any of the other baits. And I know if my rod tip can feel it, I know that bass's lateral line can feel it. And you know, some of the things that goes through my head when I'm fishing a bladed jig is, what does the bass think about it? Yeah, obviously it can see it, so it's got that profile, but what does it think about the sound and the vibration that it's causing? Is it telling it, you know, is it trying to eat it just to shut it up so it stops making all that sound? Is it an aggressive anger bite? Man, somebody get this thing to shut the heck up. Fish head spin. Haven't had a tremendous amount of action on this, but very unique. Double blade, so you've got your vibrating jig blade and you also have your underspin blade. I'm surprised I haven't got more on this, but it's hopefully it's gonna have its day in the sun soon. Bass Angler Bait Company, Will Selby, he's making some custom vibrating jigs. This has a weed guard on it. Pretty unique blade combination. Curious to know if you guys ever bend your vibrating jig blades. Something I saw on social media a few years back. I was doing it and then I stopped doing it. I was doing it to help the bait stay down, lower in the water column. But then I started finding that certain baits didn't really need it. The Picasso shock blades, they have those holes drilled in them, and I found that they really didn't need it. This time of year, I like fishing vibrating jigs. I'm a reaction bait guy. I like to chuck and wind and chuck and wind. Last November, I had a fantastic bite here on the local ponds throwing this. This is a Z-Man original black and blue half-ounce chatterbait with a bluegill flash Kitech or a bluegill flash rage swimmer on the back. This is my go-to color and trailer for this time of year. My go-to chatterbait is a Z-Man Project Z chatterbait. That's my go-to chatterbait because of the cost and how fast it starts up. It starts up just as fast as a jackhammer. It thumps just as hard as a jackhammer, but it doesn't cost $16 like a jackhammer. But if I had to choose one, it'd be a Z-Man Project Z in black and blue with a bluegill flash. But you guys will see some of those. You guys will see some of the fish catches I had from last year. We'll in the video coming up, we'll get into trailers here a little bit. Everybody knows you guys can put whatever you want on the back of a chatterbait. A Zacco is a pretty popular bait. You can see some here in white. You see some here in Tennessee shad. But one thing I really want to talk to you guys about is save your flukes. Once they get beat up on the front end, save them and put them on the back of a chatterbait. I've got a bunch of them in my box. And then save your old swim baits. Once they get beat up, cut the tail off if you want to be a little bit different. Try and leave a little bit of that meat on that tail, but cut it off. Put that on the back of your vibrating jig. I like paddle tail swim baits when the water's cold. I like stuff with more action like a rage swimmer or a beaver bait when the water's warm. I think that's pretty much it. Stay tuned. Hope you guys enjoy the fish catches coming up. At the end of the video, I'll show you what I mean by that hunting action. You guys will be able to see one of those bladed jigs from Nate's Custom Baits at work. Appreciate you tagging along. Thanks a lot. Hope y'all can get out there and get some fish this fall. Rods up, tight lines. See ya. little vibrating jig around. Not sure if you guys have ever heard of Nate's Custom Baits, but he makes a pretty sweet bladed jig combination, silicone and natural hair. Thing looks great swimming in the water. It's got a great hunting action. Doesn't really swim anything like a chatterbait or, you know, a Z-Man product. This thing, it's connected with a split ring, so this thing's got a much more hunting style, if you can see that. Found out about this company from Fish Brain last year. Started picking up some of their jigs. Are pretty sweet. I think there's definitely a time and a place for a Z-Man chatterbait. I think there's definitely a time and a place for something that's a little bit more erratic. This thing thumps just as hard as a jackhammer. So as far as water displacement, I know it's pushing water. May not necessarily have that head-knocking sound underwater, but if you haven't heard of them, I definitely recommend checking them out, picking up some of their products. They do other things other than bladed jigs. Nothing, in my opinion, nothing better than supporting small local businesses, especially US-made businesses. You know, being able to say, yeah, man, I get my baits from a company made right here in the US. Something to be said for that. You can see that rod tip though. That puppy is thumping.